Welcome to Contemporary Black Voices, where we take on the most important issues confronting Black America. Our discussion today features our regular panelists, New York Times bestselling author Caleb Alexander, the writer, Mr. Fred Williams, and today we're missing the lovely Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell. And I'm Chris Dawkins, and I'll be your host for today. The title of today's discussion Is it time for Black people, to reevaluate our position? Blacks are facing many problems on many fronts. Nationally, our voting rights are being challenged, and the blatant racism is shown in many areas. Internationally, do Blacks support the efforts of countries like Niger and Haiti? And education wise, books are being banned, which speaks to slavery and the contribution Blacks have made to America. We will challenge our panelists in this discussion today. So let's begin our discussion by asking Fred, the writer, to speak on the national issues.
The national issues are what you probably just talked about.
And there may be more.
We're losing their voting rights. Economically, it's getting much more difficult for Black people to achieve a middle class life. So do we need to reevaluate our situations? Absolutely. We should have done that a long time ago. But the problem is, whose responsibility is that to reevaluate us on a national level? I would say it'd be the Congressional Black Caucus. But are they doing that? I remember when I used to go to caucus events, it was more about us, Black people. But you go to the Congressional Black Caucus now, and you got beer people with booths, you got cigarette people with booths, you got all these different booths. And so I would maintain that a lot of these Black elected officials are not much different than a lot of the white officials. They're depending on money for their next election.
Well, I would push back on you and say your proclivity has always been to talk about the elected official. And I don't necessarily believe that the elected official is the person who's going to be our savior. I believe that the elected official is a tool that we can use, but we as Black folks have to tell those folks what it is we want. The problem that has been always for anybody, whether it be Black or white, is that we're allowing politicians to create what we want as opposed to we being the boss of them.
No, what we don't do, I agree with you, what we don't do is we don't make them accountable. When we elect these people, they become like gods.
Right, correct.
You know, and they stay there forever. John Conyers was there for what, 50 years. We don't, and if you challenge them, you don't get far because they have it all wrapped up. You know, people here, it's the same thing. I see what's happening in this city. The politicians are leading everything, and people just follow like little dogs behind them. We got to challenge these people.
And how do we do that?
By looking at the voting record. Somebody should be looking at Barbara Gordon Hawkins' voting record in Austin. See who she is dealing with. Nobody does that. Or even the guy on the city council. We don't know his voting record. We don't do those things. We need to start doing that. And no, the caucus are the elected Black officials throughout this country. You have them from Houston, you have Blacks in Houston, you have Dallas, you have Baltimore, New York. They are representative of the Black people who put them there to do our bidding, policy-wise.
Before I go to Caleb, I want to ask you one additional point, which is when you have in our country a situation that's happening, and you talk about the political issues that are going on, is everything based on political issues?
Everything is based on politics and money. And money controls the politics. So they make the policy in Washington, D.C. I mean, show you how bad it is. When they had that, they had a gun control bill, a Black senator didn't support it out of South Carolina. He didn't support it, but he goes back there and gets reelected, and now he's running for president. Now, that's a good question. Should we as Black people be supporting this guy because he's Black? Heck no. I don't think we should. No, everything flows from politics. Everything flows from politics. And then the other part of that, where are our interest groups? Do you know, I used to tell my students,
Do we have any interest groups?
yeah, we have the NAACP has an interest
Okay.
before, years ago, when Clement Mitchell was the lobbyist for NAACP, he was very effective. He was called the 101st senator in Washington, D.C. I don't know how effective they are today.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know. So, yeah, I think that those are the people that we can, you know how we can hold them accountable?
How?
Vote their butts out of office. But we don't do that. We just automatically say, oh, it's John Conyers, I got to vote for him.
And you know, I'm again before I turn to Caleb, the one thing that happens in, let's say, the state of Texas, where we are right now, if you look at East Texas and the makeup of the people in East Texas, there should be no damn way that East Texas should not have a black representative. Period. Okay. We should be running that area of Texas. Period.
We, not all of us, but black people have to live from day to day
Okay.
because of our economic situation they got us into in this country. They can't think about next year. They're trying to feed kids. They're trying to survive. We're not forward thinking that way. And for a reason, the folks have to survive. So they don't put a lot of emphasis on the politics. They put the emphasis on surviving tomorrow.
Let me turn to Caleb and talk about the international issue. We are now looking at things that we think that they're local with what's happening with black folks in America, but yet and still, we talked a couple weeks ago about Niger. There are things that are going on in Haiti. There are a lot of different things which are going to put our soldiers possibly at odds with what the principles should be of us as black people. So can you speak to that?
Yeah. So I guess so. Starting off, just to, just to recap. So we know there's a few things that have gone on internationally. Everybody's attention is on what's going on in Niger. And so there was a coup d'etat. So there was a coup d'etat in Guinea. There's a coup d'etat in Mali. There's a coup d'etat in Burkina Faso. And a few years back, of course, there was a coup d'etat in Chad. So we have this belt across West Africa, or what they call what's known as the Sahel. And so where you have young, dynamic black leaders that have taken power, that have thrown off a lot of the colonial thrown off neocolonialism and thrown off their colonial oppressor France. And so when you look at, as far as your question goes, about a reset, and so basically what's going on over there is a reset. They're changing the dynamics. They've taken control not only of their country, they've taken control of their resources. Again, many people have spoke about this, about how the outflows that those countries, those French-speaking countries, they contribute $500 billion a year to the French treasury. And so those remittances have stopped. That outflow has stopped. And so again, it's a changing dynamic. And so the other part of your question is about American engagement and the potential for African-American soldiers who are part of the U.S. military to engage. And so we talked about this a few weeks ago, but since then, of course, new information has come out. The situation has changed. The situation has developed a little bit further, so we can take another reassess some of our initial concerns. And so the U.S. interests, basically, let me take a step back. So what's going on is with the coup in Niger, you've had the ruling parties have stopped gold and uranium exports to France. And so how this affects France is that 30% of their uranium comes from Niger, and so they no longer have that. And France, the majority of France's power comes from nuclear power. And so France is panicking. The United States interest, like what an article I shared with you guys the other day, is not the same as France's issue, as France's position. Their positions are completely different. So I think that kind of mitigates that crisis of where you would have African American soldiers directly engaged in combat against their brothers in Africa. And so again, the situation on the ground has changed. So the United States has even taken steps to where they and France have kind of exchanged words about this. France has gone to the United States. They're wanting U.S. assistance, but the U.S. interest is different. The U.S. is more worried about losing Africa to Russia and to China. They're worried about losing influence. They built a brand new shiny $100 million drone base that they want to keep. So their approach has been different. They want to talk. They want to negotiate. And so I don't think that you'll see a situation where you have African American soldiers having to engage their brothers in.
Well, let me ask you this: is there anybody, or let me just ask you, if you were talking to your son or daughter, why should they be looking at this as a possible threat to them, or how can they look at it as an advantage to them?
Right. So again, it's when you have a reset like that, right? So yeah, and it goes. So why do we care, right? In this country, why do Black folks care about what's going on over there? And so it's what they're talking about, or what they're doing over there right now is they're talking about a federation, a federated state, and so they have integrated. Burkina Faso and Mali has integrated their militaries. They have the unified command structure. They've already declared that if you attack Niger, you've declared war on us as well. And so they've also invited Guinea to integrate into their military command structure. They're integrating economically. Okay, so after they of course, like I say, after the military integration and the economic integration comes the political integration, or the political federation. So what you would see if those countries federate, it changes. It's a complete game changer globally, because what you would have, these are some pretty large countries. If you have a federated state such as a federation that includes Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and even potentially Chad, you would have a unified African country that's larger than the United States. And so with resources such as uranium, gold, cotton, coltan, everything that you can think of, this new nation, which again would be larger than the United States, would have. It's a game changer. That's why it matters.
I think that the question to you, or to all of us, should be redirected. How do we make our people care? How do we make our people care? Not only about Africa, but about what's happening here in this country.
Right.
And so when you ask, is it time for us to reevaluate our situation? I think we have to go. John Hope Franklin said, if there's a problem, go back to the source to see where it started. And that's what we have to do. Is we know we have problems, and so we go back to the source. My thing is, when our ancestors got out of slavery, man, those white folks didn't give them, oh, here's $1,000, go set up your land. They didn't give them a darn thing. They just said go. And so we turned to the church. We turned to the church. The church was supposed to deliver us. So when you ask the question to reevaluate, I think what I would say we need to start with, let's reevaluate how well the church has done in delivering us.
That's a good point to stop at. Yes, sir. And we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to pick this up, and we're going to pick it up with you. And we're going to have more of a discussion about this.
Okay.